Will these winter movies flop or succeed at the box office? Starting off, we have Sonic 3 coming out this December. Now, obviously, the first two movies were very successful at the box office. Sonic 2 just brought in $405 million, and I honestly feel like the hype for Sonic 3 has gotten to an all-time high level, especially since we're introducing Shadow, who's an absolutely massive character. We have Jim Carrey coming back as Dr. Eggman. I honestly think this is going to be the best Sonic movie, and probably the highest grossing at the box office, because it's coming out a couple weeks before Christmas, going to get all that Christmas break money. I think it's going to be absolutely massive and a massive success. But it's definitely not all good for December movies. We also have Sony's Kraven the Hunter that was supposed to come out a couple months ago, but now it got delayed until December. Listen, I really like Aaron Taylor Johnson. I think he's going to be a lot of fun in this role, so that's going to give this a little bit of a boost over things like Morbius and Madam Web, because the main actors in those are just completely lifeless. This is definitely going to be closer to like a Venom with Tom Hardy, where it's just going to be dumb fun. But I'm sorry, who on the planet cares enough to go see a Kraven movie without a Spider-Man in it? Because this is not that popular of a character. I've read a few comics with him and I really enjoyed them, and I really like him in the Spider-Man PS5 game, but I'm sorry, people are not going to be flocking to the theater to go see Kraven the Hunter. Yeah, the Venom movies made a ton of the box office, but Venom's also a super popular character, where Morbius and Madam Web, I think this movie is going to fall right in between these two, if not lower, and it's going to be a massive flop and hopefully the end of these Sony villain movies. Another December new release I'm really looking forward to is The Lord of the Rings War of the Rohirrim. This is going to be like an anime style animated Lord of the Rings film, and it's taking place around 200 years before the original Lord of the Rings trilogy. I think the art style for this is absolutely gorgeous, and I'm personally really excited for this movie. I think it's going to be really good and a great return to Middle Earth while also being a fresh new tale. But I just don't think the general public and a lot of the people that grew up with Lord of the Rings are going to be attracted to this kind of anime style, which is a sad reality of just how older people view animation. I also think this is going to be a little bit swamped by the other competition like Sonic 3 and another movie I'll get to right after this on the list coming out in the same month, so I think this is sadly going to flop. Hopefully it has a super cheap budget though and ends up being a success. It just doesn't seem likely to me. Yeah, the other movie coming out in December that I think is going to absolutely swamp the other ones is Mufasa The Lion King. Now, this is one of my least anticipated movies of the year. I think this is absolutely pointless. I wish if they were telling this prequel story, they did it in the original Lion King animation style instead of whatever this fake just CGI live action is. It's one of those things you have to disconnect from real life. Now, I don't think this movie is going to make as much as the last live action Lion King, which made 1.6 billion and was the highest grossing quote unquote animated movie of all time before Inside Out 2 came along. It's not going to be that successful, but the general public does like this kind of stuff, and they're going to go see it no matter how much film Twitter and YouTube tells you it's going to be stupid, like me. The big reason I don't think it's going to be as successful as the first live action Lion King is because back in 2019, people were just going to see everything in the theaters. Look at the movies that made over $1 billion. We had Far From Home, Captain Marvel, Joker, Rise of Skywalker, Toy Story, Aladdin, all over $1 billion. Whereas in 2024, we only have 2 films currently over $1 billion. So I think this can probably get close to that marker, if not over like 700 million, but that's still going to be very profitable for them. December is really just absolutely loaded with new movies. We also have A Complete Unknown coming out right around Christmas time, like the week before, starring Timothée Chalamet. If you don't know, this is the Bob Dylan biopic. As we know, Timothée Chalamet has a pretty stacked filmography for being someone under 30 like he is, and he is now working with James Mangold on this project, who is very hit or miss as a director for me, but I do personally think this is going to be good. I think the trailer looks pretty enjoyable, even though I'm not like the biggest Bob Dylan fan or anything. I've seen Timothée Chalamet in some absolutely smash box office performances lately, like Wonka and Dune Part 2, but obviously those kind of franchise films are very different than something like this that's a biopic over someone that's, yes, very famous, but I don't know if he has a big enough draw to make this a super successful film. The movie's not going to obliterate the box office or anything, but I think it's going to be one of those movies that kind of anybody can just go and see. It's going to have some pretty good legs and just keep raking in money weeks after weeks, especially in January, which is kind of the dead months of new movies. I think it can probably pull in around like $150 to $250 million, somewhere between there, landing around the Bob Marley biopic from last year, and be a nice profitable film made on a low budget, which we need more of these types of movies in theaters anyways. Robert Eggers' Nosferatu looks absolutely insane. We just got the trailer for it a couple days ago. I am so hyped for this thing. The visuals are off the charts, and I actually reacted to the trailer on my new reaction channel. I'm going to be watching a whole bunch of other things like Cyberpunk Edge Runners and Don Da Don for the first time ever, so go check that out. I'll link it here and at the end of the video, my new channel. Now, Robert Eggers is not a guy that makes films that are made for the mass audiences, at least before in his career, and his films have been pretty low budget until The Northman, which cost between $70 and $90 million. but he did come out and say in an interview that Nosferatu is going to be slightly cheaper than this one, so probably around like the $50 million range, which is actually not bad for this budget. Plus, just straight up horror movies do very well at the box office. I think this releasing over Christmas has a chance to be a surprise hit. Now, once again, not anything that's going to obliterate the box office, but for the budget it's on and the director, I think this is easily going to be his biggest. I think it could push upwards to 200 million worldwide, which would be profitable, so I'm going to say it succeeds, and I really hope it does. Mickey 17 is the next film from director Bong Joon-ho, who absolutely has been killing it with pretty much every film he's put out, and Parasite was absolutely massive just critically, and everybody agrees that that thing's a masterpiece. Now Mickey 17 looks like it's going to be just a straight up wacky comedy with Robert Pattinson playing two versions of himself, just giving you the wackiest performance I've ever seen in my life in the trailer. And these are not the type of movies that normally do very well at the box office, especially nowadays, but I do think this film being so heavily leaning into the comedy aspect is going to make a lot more people open to going and checking it out. It's hard to say without knowing the budget, but I think it's fair to say that this movie probably ends up just breaking even, which is about doubling whatever its budget ends up being. It's not going to be massive by any means, but if it can pull in between like 70 to 150 million dollars at the box office and get some nice legs on streaming and digital, I'll be very happy. I'm excited for it. 2025 also has Dogman pretty early off in the year. Now, I'm not going to lie, Dogman was kind of after my time. I was a fan of Captain Underpants as a kid, and this is created by the same person, but I never really read any of these books. I know people do absolutely love them from some of my previous videos where I disrespected Dogman. Don't worry, I hear you, Dogman Army. I know there's a huge fan base for these, and I understand it just wasn't my time period. I think the trailer looks cute enough, and I think this is going to be fine, but January is kind of a dead month for new movies to arrive, and everybody's going to be back to school, especially kids right after Christmas break. So again, I feel like that's kind of a weird time to release this. It's kind of like the Transformers 1 releasing a couple weeks into September of the winter months, which is sad because Transformers 1 is amazing and is slightly underperforming at the box office. I think this is probably going to do the same. I think it will ultimately end up breaking even, and who knows, it could have great legs and end up being a success, but I'm putting it in break even for now. Don't worry, peak cinema is on the way because also in January we're going to be getting Paddington in Peru. I cannot wait for this stupid little bear to come back into our hearts. We can all accept that the Paddington movies are simply just absolutely cinema, and the first one actually cost like $60 million, and the budget surprisingly dropped to around like $40 to $50 million for the second one, so who knows, the third one might even be cheaper or around that $50 million range still. And Paddington 2 actually made over $227 million, which is just a great return on a movie this cheap, so even if the profits drop in the third one and the total box office comes down to like $150 to $75 million, the movie is still ultimately going to be successful, so this one has to go in the successful category. There's almost no way this thing makes under $150 million, and it could honestly end up being the highest grossing Paddington movie, who knows. Now we come to the most interesting one on the list in my opinion, which is Captain America Brave New World, which I think actually looks really good in the trailers, and the MCU has been gaining a lot of momentum lately. Agatha All Along is pulling in great numbers. Deadpool and Wolverine obviously shattered over $1 billion. It's like, oh my god, the MCU is actually back, and now we're going to get a more serious kind of thriller movie similar to The Winter Soldier. Could this be massive? The problem is the movie actually could be very big, but apparently the budget is around $350 to $375 million, making it one of the most expensive movies ever made. This is definitely because A, the movie has a ton of different characters, and we got Red Hulk and the Sidewinder and all these new villains in it, but also the movie went through a ton of reshoots, like 6 to 8 months of reshoots last year after it did test screenings and tested very poorly. They went and changed a ton. So the budget's so inflated because they were practically making like 1.5 to 2 full movies to get this one thing released and finished. So even if the movie is massive, it's going to probably have to make upwards of $800 to $900 million to even start breaking a profit, if not more than that. Like, I'm personally very excited to see Sam Wilson take on the Captain America mantle, but I don't know how much of the other audience members that went and saw all the original Captain America movies that did very well at the box office are going to care about this one. I think the total box office gross will look good on paper, being around like $800 million for this movie at the max, and that would be a very good number for most films out there, but considering the budget, I'm going to say it flops because they would still lose money if they made that much only. Here's my predictions for pretty much every movie releasing between December of this year and February of next year. As I mentioned below, I did start a new reaction channel. I'd really appreciate if you went and check that out, or click below and see a different video on my channel now.